All right, secondly, UFC 244's presser is in the books. It took place at Pier 17, not too far from here, just across the water, right by the Brooklyn Bridge. It was interesting in so many ways. You had Jorge Masvidal coming out looking like Tony Montana, Nate Diaz in like a cheerful mood almost, for Diaz anyway, and the UFC really getting behind the presser in the way, and this fight in a way that they haven't gotten behind before. They had The Rock apparently is going to put the BMF belt. There's going to be a BMF belt, but The Rock's going to put it on the winner no matter what.
Yeah, the parental advisory.
Oh my God, the parental advisory. So Masvidal versus Diaz and the way it was the signage structured, just so brilliant. They lean into it. Let me ask you though, Brian Campbell, you go first on this one. The fight we all know is going to be bonkers and amazing. Yeah. And by the way, they're going to sell out MSG on a non-title night. Amazing. And by the way, no one talks about this. The fact that it's non-title, UFC 244, frees up a title to take place in the December 14th card, so they can have 2 or 3 title fights on that one.
We already have two right now.
It just works. Is there enough rivalry when this fight? Like, it felt like, if you asked me, was that a great face-off? It wasn't a great face-off.
No, everything about, unfortunately, this presser, except for the settings, the acoustics, the visuals, the optics, it's not a fail, but it was a worst case scenario for the potential of what it was. When we got the email saying, hey, be there in New York in person, that's one of those rare times where you're like, there's not going to be a fight, but I have the excitement level of a fight, right? Kind of like the Mayweather-McGregor tour. You can't argue the first 2 stops were hot fire, money, have to be there, have to see what happens. It's like performance art. Some of Conor McGregor's have been that way. This gave you that feeling coming in that this could be special. These guys are finally getting their close-up. But in the back of our brains, when this fight was announced and we were talking about would UFC make this fight, part of us cynically were like, you got 2 villains. 2 guys that, from a marketing standpoint, are perfect B-sides, especially when you put them up against a corporate, popular, crossover fighter who might run his mouth a little, a McGregor as an example, where they can be the counter to that because they're so real that when they counter that, they come back even harder and stronger. And when you match them up together, will there be a storyline? Will somebody throw the first punch? In the end, Luke, it didn't. In fact, it somewhat failed miserably in that regard. We got some good sound bites from Masvidal. He dressed and looked the part.
Diaz too.
But ultimately, Luke, unfortunately, not going to affect how the fight plays out. I do think it affected the upper ceiling potential of how this could have crossed over and where the buzz could be. Because I came out of there not nearly as excited. Again, the fight's going to be great. I would love to be there, but I'm choosing Canelo Kovalev for different reasons to go to Vegas instead that weekend. But I think they failed. And I think if you're going to point at somebody, well, first of all, you're going to point at whoever allowed that group of press to sit in front of that stage and whoever was passing around the microphone. Can we please get Tom Brady t-shirt vegan guy to ask 4 more questions about weed?
Can we throw him in the fucking water?
Look, I've been to a lot of boxing and MMA press events where, you know, the lower third of the food chain will get the microphone, and it happens, and that's just the way it is. Boxing and MMA seem to attract joesboxing.com as a website. And guess what? You can get to the majors quickly in this media business in a niche sport like this. But where the hell was John Morgan? We never needed him so badly to just bring it back to asking normal questions. We were going to this Radio Joe and this guy. That aside, Luke, I think the guy who failed in the end was Jorge Masvidal. It's me putting a lot of pressure on him, but only from a marketing standpoint, from the standpoint of 2 personalities, bringing them together and almost giving a pro wrestling light type, this is why if you're a crossover casual fan that really doesn't understand the background, why you should buy it. I think it was on Masvidal to step up and really bring an A-plus performance from a belligerent mic running, get in Diaz's face and put out a statement of violence. Now look, he didn't fail in the dress. He didn't fail going to SportsCenter or ESPN's Get Up. I mean, he brought it.
He killed it
on Le Batard. He brought it from that standpoint. But that face-off matters to people. There's currency in that. And Nate at this point is in this precarious spot where he's like the longtime villain B-side who's kind of crossing over into A-side, not company man, but the company finally understanding who he is and his value. I think it was on Masvidal, the newcomer, to step in, not create a fake fight where there isn't, not because there's a lot of respect between them, but get in his face at the very least and show that intensity that in the Garden that night, it's going to be mayhem. And I don't think he spelled that out enough. I know you're getting into that gray territory, because what I don't want UFC to do is sit these 2 guys down backstage and go, okay, guys, we got to amp it up a little, okay? Do you mind pushing each other? No, we never want any of that crap. But I think for Masvidal, who's so smart, I mean, I've done interviews with Masvidal, I'm sure you have, back when people weren't even talking about his fights, where I'm like, oh my God, if we had a TV camera here, this could have crossed over, this could have been viral. He always brings it, And this was a time, I get that there wasn't somebody agitating him, but he needed to step into that crossover mode and say, I am the guy now. I could be your next McGregor UFC. So to do that, sometimes you have to own the moment. I don't think he owned that moment enough.
I think you're being a little, I think you're generally got the right note here, but you're a little bit off. I would say this, the vibe I get is, I don't know. You ever seen Big Trouble in Little China?
Wow.
Right?
Kurt Russell?
Great movie. Remember you had the guys who were in the one gang that had the black and the red, and then the one gang with the black and the yellow. It's like they all just came together versus being apart. It's like the Crips and the Bloods after they signed their truce. Well, there's no war there. You're promising us war. It's in this weird space where it's almost like Diaz and Masvidal have signed a pact to work together, not to like stick it to UFC, but almost like stick it to the game. The game's been sticking it to them for so long. Hey guys, let's work together. Let's make a bunch of money together. They're almost happy to be in each other's company, not really because game recognized game, but because, guys, like we're finally getting our moment. They're putting parental advisory stickers up for us. Look at us, we're next to the Brooklyn Bridge. This is what we've always wanted, and I'm happy for him. I'm legitimately happy for him. And like you, if Dana White was back there being like, all right, I need some pushing, I need some shoving, it would lose everything. On the other hand, asking like, what could they have done differently? Here's a small thing they could have done differently. Get in each other's face in the face-off. Give us a moment where we can see two gangsters radiating energy off of one another and where we're like, oh man, there's gonna be war on November 2nd. They didn't do that. They have so much, it's like the Cold War is over. Détente no longer relevant. I need something where the tensions are ratcheted up, not in a personal way, but in a competitive way. You know what Jorge Masvidal has to offer. Everything.
I like the one-liner like, I'm going to baptize people, all that stuff. But you have to go up to that line. You can still respect Nate Diaz, but go up to that line and say, look, I respect you, bro, but motherfucker, I'm going to kick your ass on November 2nd.
And here's the other part. Nate Diaz is finally the A-side, as you mentioned. Here's how you know he's in a different space. Because this guy who has no brain, he just has ganglia bobbing at the end of his spine, asked him a question, hey, how can you be a man if you're a vegan? I mean, please behead this person, Robespierre style, but neither here nor there. How did Diaz handle it? You know what he said? He laughed.
After there was a long pause because they couldn't hear the crowd.
Right,
No, I'm just saying there's some technical difficulties there. How many times can Grandpa Dana
understand the point. The point is, an on-edge Nick Diaz would have chewed his head off.
Yes.
An on-edge Nate Diaz would have chewed his head off. But he's getting paid. He's on the marquee. They're almost a little too happy. I need him to be not angry. I need him to have a little bit of edge in a non-forced but palatable way. I think that part is still missing.
But you got to give UFC credit. That backdrop, and I'm not really
They
into
outdid-
this
they outdid themselves.
of sort of critiquing this. It was big time. I mean, that felt like a top shelf McGregor situation.
And that's why Diaz is so happy. He's like, I think this is what I've always wanted. Jorge Masvidal's like, I finally hit the lottery after 16 years. Fellas, we know you're happy. We need you to be a little bit less happy, if you know what I'm saying.
Shout out to a friend of the family, Phoenix Carnival, for being the journalistic heartbeat of that situation.
Also, Mark LaMonica. Mark LaMonica asked a question as well. And when there was a bunch of jabronis there as well.
Then it was Donktoberfest, yes.
It was Donktoberfest for real.